In the beginning, God spoke, and the world came alive. Over 6 days, he crafted light, sky, seas, and land, filling them with plants, stars, birds, fish, and creatures. He called it all good. Then, he shaped humans, male and female, in his image, giving them dominion over creation. On the 7th day, he rested, blessing the Sabbath. In Eden's lush garden, God formed Adam from dust and breathed life into him. From Adam's rib, he made Eve, his companion. They lived in harmony, tasked with tending the garden, but God warned them not to eat from the tree of knowledge. A cunning serpent tricked Eve, who ate the fruit and shared it with Adam. Their choice shattered paradise, bringing shame and sin. God judged the pain and toil followed, and they were banished from Eden. Yet he promised a future Savior through Eve's line, a hope for redemption. In the ancient days, after Adam and Eve left the garden, they had children. Cain, the firstborn, became a farmer, and Abel, his brother, a shepherd. They both offered sacrifices to God, but God favored Abel's offering. Jealousy festered in Cain's heart, leading him to murder his brother. When God confronted him, Cain denied his deed and was cursed, becoming a wanderer on the earth. Adam and Eve had other children, and the line of Seth began, a line that called on the name of the Lord. Generations passed, and humanity grew in number. However, wickedness also increased greatly across the earth. Violence and corruption filled the world. God, grieved by the state of his creation, resolved to send a great flood to cleanse the earth. Yet, there was one righteous man named Noah, who found favor in God's eyes. God instructed Noah to build an ark to save his family and pairs of every living creature from the coming destruction.
In ancient days, a man named Noah, righteous in a world steeped in wickedness, found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Seeing the depths of human corruption, God purposed to cleanse the earth with a great flood, but he commanded Noah to build a mighty ark. Noah, obedient to God's word, gathered his family and pairs of every living creature into the ark. Then, the heavens unleashed a torrential downpour for 40 days and nights, and the waters rose, engulfing the highest mountains. All life outside the ark perished. After the floodwaters receded and the ark rested on Mount Ararat, Noah released birds to find dry land. Finally, the earth was dry. God made a covenant with Noah and his descendants, promising never again to destroy all life with a flood. And he set a rainbow in the clouds as a sign of this everlasting promise. God then blessed Noah and his sons, commanding them to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth anew.
In the ancient world after the flood, Noah's sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth became the fathers of diverse nations, spreading across the earth. From them came mighty kings and various peoples, each with their own languages and lands. Yet, in their pride, many people in the land of Shinar, driven by a desire to make a name for themselves, began to build a towering city, and a tower that reached to the heavens, known as Babel. God, observing their unified ambition, saw their intent to live independently of him, to scatter them across the earth and thwart their arrogant defiance. God confused their languages, making it impossible for them to understand one another. Thus, they ceased building and dispersed, fulfilling God's original command to fill the earth. Among these scattered families, God chose a man named Abram, a descendant of Shem, living in Ur of the Chaldeans. God called Abram to leave his homeland, his relatives, and his father's house, and go to a land that he would show him. God promised to make Abram into a great nation, to bless him, to make his name great, and through him, all the families of the earth would be blessed. Abram, in faith, obeyed God's call, embarking on a journey with his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot, settling in the land of Canaan. Abram's story continues to unfold. When Lot and his possessions are captured by a coalition of kings, Abram, with his trained men, bravely pursues and defeats the kings, rescuing Lot and recovering all the spoils. Upon his return, he is met by Melchizedek, king of Salem, and priest of God Most High, who blesses Abram, and to whom Abram gives 1/10 of everything. Later, God reaffirms his covenant with Abram, promising him countless descendants, like the stars in the sky. Abram believes God, and it is credited to him as righteousness. God also establishes a formal covenant ceremony, foreshadowing Israel's future. God then reveals that Sarai, despite her advanced age, will bear a son, Isaac, through whom the covenant promises will be fulfilled. As a sign of this everlasting covenant, God institutes circumcision for Abram and all his male descendants. God also changes Abram's name to Abraham, father of many nations, and Sarai's name to Sarah, princess. The Lord visited Abraham, revealing Sarah would bear a son despite her age, and that Sodom and Gomorrah faced destruction. Abraham bravely interceded, pleading for the cities to be spared for the sake of even 10 righteous people. 2 angels then arrived in Sodom, hosted by Lot. When the city's men besieged Lot's house, the angels blinded them and urged Lot's family to flee. Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters escaped, but his wife looked back and turned to salt as fire consumed the cities. Later, Lot's daughters conceived sons through him. Abraham, moving to Gerar, again feared for his life, and claimed Sarah was his sister. God, in a dream, warned King Abimelech, protecting Sarah, and ensuring her return to Abraham. At long last, Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in their old age, just as God promised. They named him Isaac, meaning he laughs, reflecting their joy and perhaps Sarah's earlier disbelief. On the day Isaac was weaned, Sarah saw Ishmael, Hagar's son, mocking Isaac, leading her to demand Hagar and Ishmael be cast out. God affirmed this difficult decision, promising to make a nation of Ishmael as well. Hagar and Ishmael wandered in the desert, but God heard Ishmael's cry, provided water, and promised to be with him. Later, Abraham and Abimelech made a covenant at Beersheba, confirming Abraham's right to a well he dug. The ultimate test of Abraham's faith arrived when God commanded him to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Moriah. Abraham, obediently, prepared to offer his beloved son, but at the last moment, an angel of the Lord intervened, providing a ram as a substitute. This profound act demonstrated Abraham's unwavering trust in God. Finally, Sarah died at 127 years old, and Abraham bought the cave of Machpelah from the Hittites as a burial place, marking his first land acquisition in Canaan. Abraham, old and content, sends his servant to his homeland to find a wife for Isaac from his own kin, not a Canaanite. The servant, guided by God, meets Rebekah at a well. She generously waters his camels, fulfilling a sign. He returns with her, and Isaac finds comfort and love in Rebekah after his mother's death. Abraham then takes Keturah and has more children, expanding his lineage, before dying at 175 and being buried with Sarah. Isaac and Rebekah remain barren for 20 years until Isaac prays, and Rebekah conceives twins. God reveals the older will serve the younger. Esau, a skilled hunter, is born first, then Jacob, who is quiet. Esau later despises his birthright, selling it to Jacob for a bowl of stew. A famine drives Isaac to Gerar. God reiterates the covenant with Abraham to Isaac, blessing him. Fearing for his life, Isaac lies about Rebekah being his sister. Abimelech discovers the truth. Isaac prospers greatly, causing the Philistines to envy him and fill his wells. Isaac moves away, digging new wells, before finally settling at Beersheba, where God reaffirms his presence. Isaac, old and blind, intended to bless Esau, but Rebekah favored Jacob. She orchestrated a deception, making Jacob impersonate Esau. Isaac, fooled by Jacob's disguise and savory food, bestowed the blessing of the firstborn upon him. When Esau returned, enraged by the betrayal, he vowed to kill Jacob. Rebekah sent Jacob to her brother Laban in Haran. On his journey, Jacob dreamt of a ladder to heaven with angels ascending and descending, and God reaffirmed the Abrahamic covenant. Arriving in Haran, Jacob met his cousin Rachel at a well. Falling deeply in love, he agreed to work 7 years for Laban for Rachel's hand, but Laban deceitfully substituted Leah on the wedding night. Jacob then worked another 7 years for Rachel. Rachel's barrenness leads her to give Jacob her servant Bilhah, who bears Dan and Naphtali. Leah, desiring more children, offers Zilpah, who bears Gad and Asher. Leah then has Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. Rachel finally conceives Joseph. Jacob, seeking to increase his own wealth, cleverly uses a breeding strategy with Laban's speckled and spotted animals, greatly prospering. God instructs Jacob to return home. Fearing Laban's reaction, Jacob secretly departs with his family and flocks. Laban pursues them, accusing Jacob of stealing his household gods which Rachel secretly hid. They make a covenant of peace at Galeed. As Jacob approaches Canaan, he sends messengers to Esau, fearing his brother's wrath. He divides his company and earnestly prays for deliverance. Jacob then wrestles with a mysterious man and angel all night at Peniel, is wounded, but receives a new name. Israel meaning struggles with God. Jacob, fearing Esau, sent gifts ahead, then met his brother. Against expectations, Esau embraced him, a tearful, reconciled reunion. Jacob settled in Shechem, buying land. However, Shechem, the Hivite prince, violated Dinah, Jacob's daughter. Her brothers, Simeon and Levi, enraged, deceitfully orchestrated the circumcision of all Shechemite males under the pretense of marriage. While they were recovering, Simeon and Levi brutally slaughtered every man, plundering the city. Jacob was greatly distressed by their violence. God then commanded Jacob to Bethel. There, Jacob purified his household of foreign gods, built an altar, and God renewed his covenant with him, reaffirming his name, Israel. On the journey, Rachel tragically died giving birth to Benjamin, near Bethlehem. She was buried there. Finally, Isaac died at 180 in Hebron, and was buried by his now reunited sons, Jacob and Esau. Genesis 36 details Esau's descendants in the kings of Edom, establishing his distinct nation. This chapter, while seemingly a diversion, underscores God's blessings extending even to Jacob's estranged brother. Genesis 37 abruptly shifts to Jacob's family. Joseph, Jacob's favored son, incurs his brother's intense hatred due to his prophetic dreams and Jacob's favoritism, symbolized by his special tunic. The brothers conspire to kill him but ultimately sell him to Midianite traders for 20 shekels of silver, deceiving Jacob with a bloody coat. Joseph is taken to Egypt. Judah, who separates from his brothers. His first two sons die, and he withholds his third from Tamar, his daughter-in-law. Tamar, in desperation to secure her lineage, disguises herself as a prostitute and conceives by Judah. Upon discovering her pregnancy, Judah condemns her, but she exposes him, proving he is the father. She then gives birth to Perez and Zerah. Our story now takes us to Egypt, where young Joseph, betrayed and sold, found himself a servant in Potiphar's house. Yet, the Lord was with Joseph, and everything he did prospered. Potiphar, recognizing this, put Joseph in charge. But fate had more trials. Wrongfully accused by Potiphar's wife, he was cast into prison. Even behind bars, the Lord's favor remained. Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's butler and baker, restoration for one, execution for the other. Joseph humbly requested the butler remember him, but he was forgotten for 2 long years. Then, Pharaoh himself was plagued by perplexing dreams. None could interpret them. The butler finally remembered Joseph. Brought forth, Joseph, attributing wisdom to God, revealed the dreams foretold 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of devastating famine. Impressed, Pharaoh recognized God's hand, elevating Joseph to vizier, second only to himself, to prepare and save the nation. From betrayal to prison, Joseph's extraordinary journey was divinely orchestrated. With famine gripping Canaan, Jacob sent his 10 sons to Egypt to buy grain, unaware that Joseph, now a powerful Egyptian official, was the one they would face. Joseph recognized them but feigned ignorance, accusing them of being spies. To test their integrity, he demanded they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to Egypt. Simeon was held hostage until their return. Back in Canaan, Jacob reluctantly allowed Benjamin to accompany his brothers on their second trip, as their provisions ran out. Joseph orchestrated a plan, placing his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. Upon their departure, they were accused of theft. When the cup was found with Benjamin, Joseph declared he would remain as a slave. Judah, in a moving plea, offered to become a substitute slave, expressing the unbearable grief their father would endure if Benjamin didn't return. Unable to contain himself any longer, Joseph revealed his true identity to his astonished brothers, weeping so loudly that the Egyptians outside could hear. He reassured them, explaining that God had sent him to Egypt to preserve life during the famine. He forgave their past betrayal and urged them to bring their father, Jacob, and their families to the abundance of Goshen. Pharaoh, upon hearing the news, was pleased and provided wagons and provisions for Jacob's journey. Jacob, initially disbelieving, was overjoyed when he saw the wagons Joseph had sent. He declared, "It is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Jacob, with his entire household, numbering 70 souls, journeyed to Egypt and settled in Goshen. Joseph lovingly cared for his father and brothers. As the famine intensified, Joseph wisely managed the distribution of food. eventually acquiring all the livestock and land of Egypt for Pharaoh in exchange for sustenance. As Jacob neared his end, Joseph brought his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, for a blessing. With prophetic insight, Jacob intentionally blessed the younger Ephraim above the elder Manasseh, declaring his greater future. Soon after, Jacob gathered all his sons, imparting a unique blessing or prophecy upon each, foretelling their tribal destinies. He then made them promise to bury him with his ancestors in Canaan. Upon Jacob's death, Joseph mourned deeply and arranged a grand procession to bury his father in the promised land. Afterwards, Joseph's brothers, fearing retribution, begged for forgiveness. Joseph, weeping, reassured them. "You meant evil against me," he declared, "but God meant it for good, to preserve many lives." He comforted and provided for them. Finally, at 110, Joseph also died, making his brothers promise to carry his bones back to Canaan when God would lead them out of Egypt.